Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into a brand new episode of Don't Call This a Podcast and our Election 2020 miniseries. I am your host, Ryan McLaughlin. I am very excited for today's show. It's going to be a little bit longer than last week, and I promise you I won't be alone again this time. Joining me today, I'm very excited. We're going to go ahead and kind of get things rolling because I know he's very busy and he has things to do. We will be joined by Representative Gregg Kennard of Gwinnett County, District 102, here in Georgia. He is a first-term representative in Georgia's House of Representatives. He is running for re-election this year. He is a coach, a father, a minister, a man of many different talents and backgrounds, and we are very excited to welcome him here and just kind of talk to him about his first term, his experiences, and just sort of what he's running on and trying to do now. So joining me now he should be popping in the room is and please let me know if I'm getting that correct. Is it Kennard or is it Kennard?
It's actually Kennard.
Okay, gotcha. And I apologize for that. I
Okay.
want to make sure I get those things right. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a long day. We had what we call Power Thursday to Inspire Outreach, and we bring all of our clients who are part of the homeless program. They come into our office building, and we have sessions after sessions every hour on the hour. So we start out with a leadership class. I do a certified John Maxwell class for a number of our clients who will get a certified course under their belt. And then we move into our workout, which is usually T25 or yoga. And then at 10 o'clock, I do a general session. At 11 o'clock, we break out to a recovery meeting, a financial literacy class, and a GED prep class. And then we have lunch, and simultaneously we have our counselor in who's seeing clients. So Power Thursday, it's aptly named, but there's a lot going on. And then spent the afternoon kind of doing some canvassing for the campaign.
Gotcha. So before we jump into things and kind of start our actual interview process, can you tell us a little bit about Inspire and just kind of how it got going and what you all do?
Sure. Well, I'm an occupational minister. I've been working as an assistant pastor, associate minister, minister of music, actually, for the first part of my career. And then in 1999, I came up back to Gwinnett to found the church that's now called Inspire Outreach, and it's now been in existence for 21 years. And the church was founded on the premise of doing the real organic Jesus stuff. We're not very religious at all, but we take our cues from the Good Samaritan story, where the Samaritan just helped the man in need. He didn't do anything particularly spiritual that we would call spiritual. He didn't pray for him, anoint him with oil, lead him in the sinner's prayer, but he bandaged his wounds, gave him a ride, and provided housing for him for a few days. And so we really wanted to take very seriously the mission that was very clear in the Gospels, where Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor, to free those who are in prison, to set the captive free, to proclaim liberty. And then, of course, in Matthew 25, Jesus said, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was in prison and you visited me. I was a stranger and you took me in. So we have really modeled those words, and we're just doing what I call the Jesus stuff. And so from that kind of social justice, outreach message, we developed a residential program that serves about 70 people at a time. It's here in Gwinnett, but we serve really the metro area as well as throughout the Southeast. People come from all the bordering states to be a part of this outreach program, and we provide just 360 services. As soon as they walk through the door, they get housing, food, clothes, all the basic critical needs are met, transportation, counseling service, mental health access, a workout program, job training. Everybody goes back to school. It's a continued education program, financial literacy. So by the time someone spends anywhere from 3 months to a year or more, they've really gotten to a place of empowerment and are ready to leave homelessness behind.
That's fantastic. And a lot of what you do shows in your, not just your campaign, but your proposals, the resolutions and the bills that you've brought to the floor. And we'll get to those in a second. But I do want to ask you, just from a personal standpoint, I mentioned it before, you are a father, you are a husband, you are a coach, you are a minister. Anybody could have looked at you. You could have looked at anybody and said, Inspire, I'm doing this stuff through Inspire, and I don't want to kind of go any further. But you chose to run in 2018. You ran a race that was very close, a 600 vote difference between you and the Republican candidate. Why did you decide to do this? Why did you decide to get into politics and to try and kind of change things in that manner?
Well, the more you get into this work and you look under the hood of what's really driving these issues, you understand two things: that poverty is behavioral, but it's also structural. These things are not happening in a vacuum. There's actually a system that's propping up these results. And so through the program, we're working with individuals on personal responsibility, the behavioral side of them, creating better habits, getting them empowered and the tools that they need as individuals. But I understood that if we want to take a big picture look and deal with a structure that creates these outcomes, then it's political power that's driving this. Dr. King, my favorite quote of his, says, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin at a beggar, but it comes to understand that an edifice that creates beggars needs to be restructured." So we have a system in place that's creating poverty. So I've realized that policy and legislation is behind many of these outcomes.
Gotcha. And so, you've tackled criminal justice in the sense that you try to be proactive as well as reactive. Again, I want to commend you on how you've been insistent on criminal justice reform. And you co-sponsored House Bill 403, which included ending private prisons here in Georgia. You pushed for ending probationary periods that exceed 24 months. You pushed to prevent arrest-only criminal records from being made public. You've wanted to, I want to make sure I say this correctly, restrict the records of certain felonies and misdemeanors after completion of the sentence and payment of any restitution. You've talked about why criminal justice is a major issue to you. How do those things specifically help sort of dismantle the structure that you're talking about?
Okay, so a typical client that comes through the Inspired doors has a felony record, has a mental health diagnosis, suffers with addiction, and typically has low academic achievement. And so when you kind of see that over and over and over, and you get to the why is this happening, you kind of see the structural things in place that are propped up by policy, legislation, and political power. So one of the things with working with many of our clients on their felony record, there is a light records restriction law on the books. It just got improved a little bit with this past legislation. So we'll take what we can get. But still, my ultimate goal is to see, because right now, if you plead guilty or no contest to any charge in Georgia, you carry a record around for the rest of your life. And so we know that the poor don't have the ability to lawyer up, so they're taking plea deals, and that's an automatic lifetime sentence with a record. So long after they've served the time, they're still paying the price for that with a record, criminal record that's a barrier to housing, that's a barrier to employment, and it keeps someone hung up. And that's why the recidivism rate, why people return to prison, because their options are few once they're released. So I kept seeing these felony records just being a barrier to someone getting a living wage employment. And so when I did a deep dive and got to the bottom of it, I realized, well, that's because the law states this. So my bill, and this is for nonviolent offenses, but it includes nonviolent felonies as well as misdemeanors, that once someone has served their time, paid their restitution, they're off probation, then the criminal record is automatically restricted. It doesn't have to have a court mechanism to get it restricted. It automatically falls off, and it's very doable. And so the same thing with the probation reform. I'm sure you're aware that Georgia is the #1 state for probation. We have more people on probation than any other state in the union, 4 times the national average. We are ridiculous with probation. So someone serves some time in jail and then they're on probation for a long time, 5 years, 10 years, even more. And so even the Department of Community Supervision of Georgia, the director, he understands this. He says, we have understood, and this is nationally, that after 24 months, probation ceases to be effective, and it only becomes a trap to violate because it has no redemptive value after 24 months. So why keep people on probation after that? Mm-hmm. Some of that is answered in the economics of it. Private probation is a problem too, and 80% of all of our probationers who are on misdemeanor probation are so through a private company because it's a moneymaker.
Mm. So, kind of relaying into that, can we talk about the ending cash bail side of things that a lot of people have brought up, especially in the 2020 cycle? Joe Biden is supportive of it. We talked to Rebecca Mitchell about it last week. Can you kind of expound upon that a little bit more as we talk about just private investment in incarceration? How can that one thing kind of help fix this problem?
Well, we have to take money out of the equation. Brian Stevenson, who wrote the book Just Mercy, and of course the movie that came after, he says that in our current criminal justice system, you are treated better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. So anytime you have to factor in someone's ability to pay economics, it's going to immediately bias the system, particularly toward certain groups. And that's one of the ways that the system is biased. And that's why African Americans are disproportionately represented in our correction system. African Americans in Georgia make up 30% of the general population, but they make up 61% of the prison population.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about people mention all the time, or there's a phrase that it's criminal. You're criminalized for being poor, right? You're criminalized for not having money. If you are arrested and held on bail and you don't have the money to produce the cash, then you're just held longer. There have been stories of people being held for excruciatingly painful amounts of time. So, I'm very glad that these are things being brought to the forefront.
Let me tell you what else was criminalized. We've criminalized poverty. We've criminalized race. We've criminalized mental health. Did you know that the largest mental health service provider in our state is Georgia State Prisons? We don't address it on the front end. Georgia is like number 47 in some categories, number 50 as far as mental health access. And so when we don't deal with it on the front end, we deal with it on the back end. And that's why we have huge population in the prisons. But if we reinvested and reallocated the money on the front end and really truly addressing mental health, we wouldn't have a need for prisons. So we've criminalized it.
Well, and just everything from, if you go back to the whole, 1013 classifications and all that kind of stuff, just from personal things I've dealt with, the facilities that we have here do not get to the root of the problem. They don't give, there's not a way for somebody, if they're going through a mental health episode, to call and speak to a therapist at 10 o'clock at night, at 1 in the morning.
So law enforcement's being called.
Right. And they're taking them and they're either locking them up, they're declaring them 1013, putting them in a facility. And, it's supposed to be 72 hours, but God help you if that happens on a weekend, it extends it. And so for some people that causes traumatic experiences, and I can go on a tangent about that. I don't want to get into personal familial stories, but I've dealt with that firsthand.
No, it's true. We underserve the mentally ill, and we don't have enough resources. There's only, in Gwinnett County, in a county that's over 1 million people, or about 1 million people, we have 23 crisis beds for a 1013 situation. But that particular crisis unit is also serving Rockdale County and Newton County. So there's no way to deal with the need. So we end up taking them to jail or prison.
Well, let's kind of shift and staying in criminal justice. Let's talk about some of the bills that you've been advocating for, or that you sponsored, that advocate for tort reform when it comes to state officers and employees. You've demanded the waiver of sovereign immunity, the release of body cameras, and prohibition of altered recordings. Why is it important in your eyes to hold public safety officials accountable, and what other ways can this be done?
Yeah, because we have to have transparency, and it's not that police brutality is getting worse; it's just getting filmed. So that's because private citizens are holding up their cell phone and videoing the incident. So this has been going on forever in this country, and so we have to keep holding. I'm pro police. I want to see. I think defund the police has been misunderstood. The way I understand it is we reallocate some of the resources towards more of the aggressive, lock you up stance, and get more into mental health professionals, therapy centered contact. And so, the more that we understand the big picture, the more that we have clarity on the issue, the better we'll be able to address it. And so body cameras, the ability to hold all of our officials, including law enforcement, accountable for the bad actors, that's very, very important. So we have to remove those things that are protecting bad behavior.
Yeah, you touched on defunding, and I kind of always stress to people that there's 3 different avenues of defunding. And all of them follow the same idea. As you mentioned, reallocating resources to preventive measures. Some want to defund to abolish to rebuild, and then some want to defund to abolish to try other alternatives. And so the argument's been made, over and over again. And I think there's a really good clip that was used on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, where I can't think of the young woman's name, but she makes the point of the social contract being broken. And that's why you see so many people who are upset, who are understandably upset, not just at the murder of innocent Black people at the hands of law enforcement, but in terms of saying this does not work. What can we do to fix it? And I do think, a defund process that focuses on what we just talked about, adding crisis beds, adding, mental health care facilities, adding the little things that can keep those crimes from happening. You prevent violent crime by removing the element of desperation. And you can do that by ensuring that those preventive measures are taken as you've advocated for. So I do appreciate that. And you've done a lot of work with Georgia Justice Project, Atlanta Metro Reentry Jail. What was the other one? Southern Center for Human Rights. Can you talk about the collaborations you've done with them and sort of what the end game is for what you're trying to do with them?
Sure. Well, all of those groups are involved in reentry. So I've specifically taken some of my John Maxwell leadership material and have taught the classes to select groups at Metro Reentry. And, we've got to reimagine the prison system. And I will say that the Metro model is a great step forward from conventional prison, where they are giving folks life skills, job training. It's a transitional center, and there's a lot of resources by which to make someone ready for reentry. So we need more of that. And so with Georgia Justice Project, they've been on the front lines for a long time, as has Southern Center. That was where Brian Stevenson did his internship back in the day. So they've been in this game a lot longer than I have. And I've been able to learn a lot and collaborate and talk with their staff. I'm working with one of their Georgia Justice Project staffers right now on a child support bill, so that for someone who is incarcerated, what typically happens, and I know this firsthand through my work at Inspire, someone comes back into mainstream society. The whole time they were incarcerated, the meter was running on this child support. So now they're hit with this huge bill. They don't have a job yet, and it just exacerbates the issue. So the bill that I'm proposing, it waives child support while someone is incarcerated because they have no ability to pay it. And then once they're released, they have 60 days to get in front of a judge to modify the child support to their current situation and make it something that's doable. Because there's $2.5 billion worth of child support debt out there that's not getting paid. So who's losing? The families are losing. The children are losing. They're not getting the money. And some of it's because our child support system needs reform as well. So this will enable the person who was recently incarcerated to get back on their feet and have something doable where they can get money to their child and their children, and then ramp it up as they have the ability to increase that.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, let's move on to education, because there are a couple of different angles and programs that you've tackled, and I kind of want to start with something that is close to me, being somebody that has worked in higher education for the last almost 10 years now. You were one of 6 sponsors for House Resolution 1642, a motion to repeal a university system of Georgia by law that barred undocumented immigrants from attending USG institutions. Why specifically champion this cause?
Because these folks are here and they're living amongst us and they're making a contribution. Why not assist them in making a better contribution by helping them to elevate their position through education? So I just think it's a win-win. We have a labor shortage anyway here in Georgia, so let's get more workers in the game. And I think that's a pool of folks that we could tap into that would actually be a win-win for the state, win-win for those families, and it would just be an overall way to reposition this conversation.
All right. So just kind of staying in the higher ed front or the post-secondary front, you also signed on to a bill that would make technical college free to Georgians to assist with the state labor shortages. Is this something you would be committed to doing in the long run?
Absolutely. There's a lot of, through HOPE, there's a lot of opportunity now. There's 17 or 18 tuition-free career paths at our technical schools, and that's a great start. But, when you're talking about building the economy, it starts and ends pretty much with education. And the more we invest in education, the more we will be building a more prosperous Georgia. So it's just an investment that will keep paying off dividends. So technical college, it's almost it's a no-brainer. It's would be a relatively small investment for the state, but it would pay off big dividends in the future and very quickly.
So shifting onto onto the K through 12 side, 2 big things that are kind of one big thing that's near and dear to me, and another one that I find particularly interesting. From the interesting front, you proposed a bill that would change the compulsory age for attending school from 6 to 5. This would essentially require all Georgians to attend kindergarten. Why is this not something we've already done? I think
it's really, most people don't even know it, because it doesn't even make sense. But it's just an old, antiquated law that's never been updated. Now, I will tell you, this past session, I took it one step further to mandate pre-K. So not only mandating kindergarten, but now mandating pre-K. And here's why. You're probably familiar with the 3rd grade reading level. That is an incredible predictor of someone's life. It is almost spot on. If someone's not reading on a 3rd grade level by 3rd grade, their life is going to statistically be very tough. They're likely to drop out of school. They're likely to experience teenage pregnancy, poverty, poor health, and incarceration. There are some states that, based on that 3rd grade reading level, they go ahead and predict prison population 10 years from now. So it's a powerful, powerful predictor of someone's life. And the scary thing is, it's a crisis. It's that 2/3 of Georgia 3rd graders are not reading on level right now. So we have a crisis in the making. So a lot of this is being motivated by understanding that 3rd grade problem we have and trying to get our kids in school as early as possible. If we can get them into pre-K, kindergarten, and that will certainly improve their chances of being on level by 3rd grade. I've visited all the elementary schools in my district, and the principals across the board say, yes, there's a big difference between the kid who experienced pre-K and the one that didn't. They're so much more prepared for 1st grade when they get there. So we want to give all of our kids a fighting chance to get up to speed on their reading. Literacy rates, it's huge.
Well, kind of in conjunction with that, with graduation rates and with dropout rates, you've also signed a resolution to create a committee to increase access to after-school programs. We have seen data that shows that these programs prevent students from dropping out, along with a number of other things. So kind of a 2-front question here. Where is that committee in terms of the creation and the implementation of ideas? And if you could wave a magic wand and create the necessary programs, what would you focus on and why?
Well, it's the situation that we're dealing with in the House and really the Senate is that we don't have the numbers as far as our party to push some of these things through. So we write the law or we write the bill, we make the proposals, but then it's a dead end because we can't even get a committee hearing on any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's important this November. We've got to flip the House, and it's doable. We need 16 more seats, and then we will have a Democratic-controlled House of Representatives in our state, and that is very doable. That's why Rebecca Mitchell's race is so important. That's why Nikita Hemingway's race is so important. She's running in Lawrenceville and in Decula. So there's a few more seats that we need to take so that we can get our policy and legislation through. So, it all comes down to support. My kids, who were all honors grads in high school, and they finished with 4-year degrees, done really well. They were the benefactor of living in a household of a 2-parent family, and all kinds of generational support, and just every support system that you could imagine. They had it. So of course they thrived. And there's many children that don't quite have that circumstance. And so it's up to the community as a whole to provide that support system. That we are our brother's keeper. And so any support system, wraparound services, including after school, that we can provide for the kids who's being raised by a single parent who's working multiple jobs and just is not there to help with homework and things like that. The community needs to step up and say, these are our kids too. So that's the power of those after school programs.
Truly takes a village. I will say, and I try and kind of keep the anecdotes to a minimum on these, but one of the things that my mom always talks about growing up, she grew up in LA back in the 50s and 60s. And she said that one thing they had were after school programs and places for students to go. And
what part of, you said LA? Yeah,
Pasadena specifically. Okay. So, she always talks about having that net, that community safety net there, and how, just as she got older, as we came along, those things didn't exist. So it was more imperative for parents during, especially my millennial Gen X generation, to be as involved as possible. So if we can get back to those functions of having those after school programs, of having those things for students to fall back on, I think we would change a lot. Because, you mentioned it earlier, education is a huge indicator of progress, and it's a great way to invest in people. But if we're not doing it right, then we're setting a lot of people up for failure.
Well, not to belabor the point, but again, when you look at our prison population in this state, most of the folks incarcerated in our state prisons are school dropouts. So it's not a coincidence. This is cause and effect at its basic level.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm gonna kind of get towards business and then let you get out of here because I know you're busy. But you have been a huge advocate for small businesses, especially local businesses in Gwinnett County. You've met with a number of them in your area to just kind of get an idea of what they need. What are they telling you? What are the things that can help benefit them in terms of policies that you would support?
Sure. Well, I think we should put as much emphasis on small business policies as we do our big businesses. Georgia has, I think now 17 Fortune 500 companies that call Atlanta and Georgia home. So we're doing a good job of attracting those bigger fish. And we just need to really create a better small business climate that helps the small guy with 2 employees, 4 employees, to incentivize the tax system so that they benefit just as much.
And along the lines, you've also been a huge proponent of giving tax credits to small investors. How does that help benefit the not just communities, but the state as a whole?
Sure. Well, truly, the majority of business in Georgia is small business owners. I think it's like 75% of all our employees work for a small business owner. And of course, not all small businesses are created equal. In one metrics, we consider anybody who has 500 employees or less a small business, but there's all kinds of businesses that have much less than that, 10 or less employees. So, anything that we can do to incentivize investors, venture capitalists to take a chance with the little guy. And that was the reason behind that particular law, is just create a tax incentive system where somebody's not just going to invest in some big idea, but take a chance on the small guy.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I'm gonna get ready to let you go, but can you tell people where they can find you, how they can contact you, the best ways to donate or phone bank, or what work needs to be done?
Yeah, so if you just Google Gregg Kennard, and that's GreggKennard, pretty much the first Google page is going to be some links related to me. So you'll find my official state page, you'll find my campaign page, my Facebook, Wikipedia, Ballotpedia, all that, and there's all kinds of direct links. If you go to my campaign site, which is rep-greggkennard.com, if you'd like to make a financial contribution, that always helps, especially in a COVID environment. Talking to people on the streets, knocking on their doors, and engaging in conversation, it just can't happen easily. So we're kind of all behind the eight ball on that one. So we'll have to rely more on digital campaigns, mailers, which are certainly more expensive. So anything helps. It really does.
So
and get out and vote. My goodness. That's it. It's all in my mind, especially since the passing of John Lewis, of what a personal price he paid to expand voting rights. And then for people to kind of just sit it out and be careless and whimsical about it, it's just not fair. It's just not called for. So we've got to engage. Democracy is a grind. It's hard work, but we all have to roll up our sleeves and get involved. Vote every election. 2020 November, it's huge. There's so many implications nationally for the state of Georgia, for the county of Gwinnett. We're electing a new DA, potentially. The sheriff position is being elected upon, several commissioner positions, the chair of the county board. It's just a huge time, and we have the ability to really influence these elections, but it's going to take us all getting involved. No excuses.
Well, I was going to ask you to give a pitch about why people should support you this coming fall, but I think you've done a great job of it. Unless there's anything you want to add to it, was there anything about your personal platform you want to add, or anything of that nature? Or
just elections matter, and for too long, our lawmakers have been out of touch with real social issues, and they're passing laws that really have a bad outcome for certain population groups. And it's because they really don't know, they're not paying attention. They have no proximity to these issues. So it's not in their world. It doesn't affect them. So they don't even think about it. So it's important for folks like me who are up close and personal to some of these issues, like homelessness, like mass incarceration, like literacy rates. So it's important for someone like me to be a decision maker, a policy maker, a lawmaker, so that we can change these things. That's the only way it's going to be changed. It is political power that is fueling these outcomes.
Representative Gregg Kennard, I'm sorry, I did it again. Representative Gregg Kennard, Georgia's 102nd District, November 3rd. Please make sure you go vote. rep-greggkennard.com. It's scrolling at the bottom. Representative Kennard, thank you so much for your time this evening. Good luck to you, and we'll make sure we do whatever possible to so that you retain your seat.
All right, Ryan, keep fighting the good fight.
All right, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Ron should be on standby here shortly. He's popping on in now. Hey, what's going on, man?
What's going on?
So we appreciate Representative Kennard coming by. We are working to add as many possible representatives as we can. Of course, my focus is Georgia because I live in Georgia. But if you have a representative, if you have somebody that you want to hear from, state level, national level, we've reached out to a couple people running Senate races, then please, by all means, contact us. We want to make sure that people are being heard, that they're being able to ask questions of those who are going to represent them. So Representative Kennard had mentioned to us, and I'm actually going to text him, the 14 seats that are needed to flip Georgia's House blue. So we have been able to interview two. We've got two more in the pipeline, and hopefully a fifth one as of today. So again, support. Let's make sure we're doing what's necessary to make actionable change. Ron is here now. I think Brandon and Courtney may be delayed. Brandon's got some important work with a certain presidential candidate that he's doing right now. He won't be able to join us for the time being. But Ron, a lot has been going on this week as we transition to our actual Sorry. We have a lot going on as we transition into our actual news coverage. Starting with the Senate races. It's starting to get spicy, Ron.
It's heating up.
It's heating up. In case you haven't heard, there have been a number of states that are drawing closer and closer. The 4 that we're going to keep an eye on, since Democrats need 4 to basically flip the Senate, with the understanding that Doug Jones is likely going to lose Alabama. North Carolina right now has Cal Cunningham up by an average of about 4 points. Fox News has Mark Kelly up 17 points in Arizona. Public policy polling has Gideon over Susan Collins in Maine by 5 points. And the same poller, PPP, has Hickenlooper up by 9 points. To add to those 4 that we talked about there, Iowa, Montana, well, I should say Iowa, Georgia, Kansas, Kentucky, and South Carolina all have a Democrat within 5 points. That is a huge, huge deal. Ron, where do you see? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot Mississippi too. Cindy Hyde-Smith is only up by 5 points in Mississippi. So with the assumption that Alabama is going to do the wrong thing and put in Tommy Tuberville,
of course,
we are going to need 4 seats plus the presidency to regain control. How do you see this playing out? Do you think we can actually get a Democratic majority for the Senate come 2020?
Man, it's gonna be tough, but it's possible. It's possible. The only race I can call like definitely is I think Susan Collins is out of here. That's the one. I'm sorry, I just read your caption at the bottom. It's getting spicy, but no, I think Susan Collins is definitely out of here. That's the one I can say with like the utmost confidence. Like, she's out of here. It's going to be a major blow considering that we're losing Doug Jones. Thank you, Doug Jones, for everything you're doing. By the way, we will always remember you. But yeah, if we can get some of those other states you mentioned, like Arizona, then yeah, it's close. It's like right there. But yeah, I definitely think Susan Collins is out of here, and I think it might be scary season for Moscow Mitch in Kentucky. But we'll see.
The 2 I feel most confident about, and Courtney is now on. Everybody, Courtney's here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Food, sorry.
That's all right. So, along with Maine, I think Colorado and Arizona are toast. I honestly think that Hickenlooper is going to win that seat, and I think that Mark Kelly is going to win that seat. Doug Ducey has essentially handed Democrats the state of Arizona through not only nominating Martha McSally once, but twice, and then botching the COVID disaster or the COVID pandemic to the point where people are upset. So we could look up at the next governor's race in Arizona and see a Democrat in the governor's mansion, along with having 2 Democratic senators. Courtney, I do want to go to you because things are really starting to get interesting here in Georgia, where Loeffler looks like she's going to be more of a sure-in. However, Ossoff currently has a 2-point lead over goodness, what am I thinking here? Also currently has a 2-point lead in his race. So, Courtney, do you see at least one of the races this fall for Georgia going blue?
I do personally. Like I said, Georgia, it really depends on how much voter suppression is going on. The pandemic has made things very different. It depends on what what's going on with the mail system, because it's getting worse and worse and worse for me here in Cobb County. I don't know if you've noticed anything different, but it's got noticeably different with the mail here. And I think that's just the main thing. I think people are ready to vote blue. I think with Ossoff, I think is the one I've got my main eye on that race, but I think Georgia's been ready to vote blue, but it just all depends on how successfully the Republicans are going to be at cheating.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important part to note, right? In terms of voter purchase.
Blue. That's what people don't get. And I'm going to avoid going on a tangent about that because I see it on Twitter almost every other day. Georgia has been wanting to vote blue. Mm-hmm. It just depends on how successful the the Republicans are at cheating.
Stacey Abrams should be governor. But anyway.
I can't speak on that because technically it's my boss.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, I'll say it since you can't.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting how we are starting to see these things tighten up. Montana's in play, primarily because of who the Democrat is that's running in terms of Steve Bullock, who is a well-loved governor there. He's down 6 points, but he's got a shot at the Senate seat. against an incumbent. So these are things that are really, when you add in Joe Biden's polling right now, in terms of nationwide lead, he's been holding at about a 5 or 6 point lead. He's been holding pretty strong in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. And we'll get to kind of some of those things later on in the episode today. I think you're looking at a possibility, a real possibility that Democrats not only tie it, but have an outright majority. Because I could see a situation where not just the 4 that we mentioned with North Carolina, because Tom Tillis is not well liked, North Carolina, Arizona, Maine, Colorado, all going blue, but then also Iowa, possibly Montana, one of the Georgia seats, in South Carolina, and Kansas. That would be a big, big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move forward. Speaking of elections and voter fraud, your favorite president has encouraged North Carolina voters to vote 2 or 3 times to test the system. Trump openly told his voters to commit voter fraud while on the campaign trail, because he wanted to basically see if mail-in balloting is, in his eyes, so secure, then why not do your mail-in ballot and then go show up at the poll and try and vote in person? That'll land you in jail.
I'm sorry.
Don't tell them that. Don't tell them. I'm fine
sorry.
with them catching a felony.
I'm sorry. Let me cut in here. Like a few episodes ago, we told you how to, and this is for Alabama, but this is other states as well, what you have to do in order to vote no excuse absentee. So you request your absentee application. Okay. So you get your absentee ballot, you send that in. Your name is supposed to be taken off the voter roll at your polling location. So please do not try to show up to say you're going to vote twice, please. Because guess what that's called?
Once you've mailed out an absentee, even if you're not sure if they've got it, that's it.
That is it.
That's it. That's one of the things that's so risky about it. And you need to make sure you do it as far in advance as possible, because there's no way that I'm sure they're not going to be able to check for you. That's it. So you can only do one or the other. Now, if you have requested sorry if I cut you off, Ron.
No, I was done.
If you have requested an absentee ballot and you didn't get it yet on election day, by all means, you can. But if you've mailed it or dropped it off, that's it. Don't risk it.
That is it.
Unless you support Trump, then by all means, go 4 or 5 times. That's fine with me. Just see what happens. Just see. Go in different states too. Try that. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're still muted, Ryan.
Whoops, my bad. I do want to point out, I do want to make the comment that he said all of this. Look, man, you can watch this man in real time wrestle with the idea of losing, but being too prideful to go out like that, right? Like, he's wrestling with the idea that, damn, I may really be down in the polls and be out of here come January, but also I don't want to let that happen. So how can I not let that happen, but also vocally tell people that, yo, I'm not trying to let that happen? I mean, he said at this rally or at this campaign stop that basically I'm not happy about the expansion of mail-in voting, and we're fighting it in court. So we actively don't want people to be able to vote during a pandemic safely. We're going to try and stop it, but send your balance, send them in strong, whether it's solicited or unsolicited. The absentees are fine, but go to vote. And if they haven't counted it, you can vote. That's the way I view it.
To make things even worse, A.G. Bart was interviewed and he claimed he did not know that was a law. He was like, oh, I didn't know. Like, really?
That reminds me of, I don't know who it was. It was someone that like worked for Trump. I don't know if it was, they didn't know that you could swear on things that aren't the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was
yeah.
that?
Yep.
That's in the same line. That's just the same level to me. If we were just like, is this reality? This isn't a skit? This isn't a Daily Show skit? Because it seems like a Daily Show.
It seems like.
I'm trying to find the name of it. Roy, the other Roy Moore. Yeah. Because he ended up mouth agape when confronted on that by Jake Tapper. So.
And he was just like.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, moving on from that debacle, please, if you have, as they mentioned before, if you've mailed off your ballot, do not try and go to the polls. If you have not mailed it out or if you've not received it, then by all means go and try and vote, and just don't do the stupid thing that he's talking about doing, because you will get arrested for voter fraud once you're caught on that.
You're a Trump supporter, then we're lying. This is a conspiracy, and then send in as many as you want. Go to multiple polls. Register multiple addresses.
I mean, I was gonna say that Trump supporters probably aren't gonna be watching this, but based on the comments I had to block earlier.
Oh yeah, the comments were going crazy.
Yeah, so same person, they've been blocked, but it's all good. So moving forward, another Republican has abandoned Trump in terms of support for the fall. Former Republican governor of Michigan, I always get ready to pronounce his name incorrectly. Rick Snyder. I don't know why I want to see. I don't know why I want to say anything different, but Rick Snyder, former Republican governor of Michigan, has endorsed Joe Biden. He wrote a full op-ed in USA Today, just kind of hitting Trump on a couple of different numbers. Like it wasn't really light either. He called him a bully, which in and of itself is light. But he said, quote, Trump ignores the truth, has also demonstrated that he does not fully appreciate public policy matters, including public health, the economy, and foreign relations, nor does he seem to want to learn. That is, of course, the common name of any Republican that refuses to endorse Trump. So why is it that people can't seem to pick up on this idea that, like Barack Obama said, he's not going to grow into the job because he can't?
Dollar signs.
Mm-hmm.
Dollar signs.
Do you take any stock in another Republican sort of? Remember, this is Flint guy. So I was
just about to say that. I was about to say, let's be clear here.
Yes.
Rick Snyder isn't the best endorsement. This is Flint, Michigan guy, just to put that out. Rick Snyder had there's a lot of controversy around him, so this isn't going to move the needle necessarily. He was likely out of favor in that cabal anyway, so this isn't going to shift opinion either way. But still, we need more Republican voices coming out saying like we said, like the first episode of the show, not only saying I do not support Trump, but flat out saying I'm going to take it a step further and vote for Joe Biden. In 2016, people just wrote in their names. Mitt wrote in his wife's name. I think, like, no, say you're voting for Joe Biden. But yeah, Rick Snyder isn't the greatest endorsement, but at the same time, it's still another Republican basically defecting and say I'm not rolling with Trump anymore.
I mean, Mitt Romney could sway a lot of voters if he came out and outright endorsed Joe Biden. And the fact that he won't really, to me, says a lot more about him than anything else. I will give Mitten his credit when it's due. But yeah, Courtney, do you see this kind of moving? I mean, maybe it could move some Michigan voters who were centrist to the left.
I mean, I'm not as familiar with Michigan people, but I'm familiar with Illinois people, which are very similar. I think it depends. I think whoever is like the Trump supporter is gonna support Trump no matter what, even if he shoots their mama in the face and spits on her body. I think there are some people that may have. God, I feel like I'm giving people way too much benefit of the doubt when I'm about to say this. Is that in some blight of ignorance, they got hit in the head and they still wanted to maintain their Republican values. They voted for Trump in 2016. I think that people can be convinced that it's not ethical to vote for him, and that's it. If you're just like a pure, like the traditional Republican values, maybe those people, but I think they're too small for it to be really significant.
Well, in a state like Michigan, I feel like it could play a big role, especially since
it depends.
Yeah.
It's someone that has like driven around the Midwest. It looks just like Kentucky does when you're there, when you're outside of the cities. I think maybe with some moderates, like the suburban moderates, possibly. But yeah, I think it's one thing to get people to not only not vote for Trump, but to also vote for Biden. So I don't know. I know that he's just not well liked by anybody that much. Anyone that's not going to support Trump doesn't like him. So I don't know how much that holds.
Yeah. Well, we'll move forward in terms of people that actually do like Joe Biden and would vote for Joe Biden. we are starting to see that Joe Biden has eclipsed Trump in terms of support from the military. In a recent poll conducted by the Military Times, 49.9% of veterans actually disapprove of Donald Trump. And in context, about 41.3% would vote Biden, compared to 37% who would vote Trump and 12% who would vote third party. I do want to highlight why this is important. Support for Trump in the 2016 campaign for veterans was about the same. Was about the same as Biden right now. 40.5% of military veterans in 2016 supported Donald Trump, compared to 20.6 Hillary Clinton and 34.3 third party. So that is a major shift to where those who would have voted third party last year are siding with Biden, and it has actually eroded. It's only eroded Trump's actual voting percentage within the military by about 3 or 4%. So let's kind of talk about that, because that actually adds a lot of context to this race overall. What's happening this time around, what happened last time, is a lot of people who would have voted for Hillary voted Jill Stein, whereas a lot of people who would have voted for Republican would have voted Gary Johnson. There's not really no third-party candidates are ever viable, but there's not really any well-known third-party candidates this time around. Joe Jurgensen isn't really getting any airtime, and I can never think of the Green Party candidate's name off the top of my head. But this time around, you're seeing far less third-party support that is going towards Biden. So is this kind of military survey indicative of what we may see in terms of the final results of the election?
Yes. And also let me signal boost this because this I'm going to answer your question, by the way, but this story dropped actually while you were doing the interview with Gregg Kennard. So Atlantic posted a story where Trump asked wounded veterans to be excluded from a military parade because nobody wants to see amputees. Also, he was at a cemetery in France and he called the dead soldiers their losers. So I think, and let's just give Trump's record with the military here. His first month in office, he got a Navy SEAL killed because he sent them in on a mission with bad intel. He has made fun of he made fun of John McCain. Then there's the entire Russia thing with possibly killing troops in Afghanistan. So I'm starting to see, and maybe this is indicative of people in the military looking at this and like, maybe this guy really doesn't support us like we thought he did. So yeah, if that voting block right there, if you can take the military, then yeah, because that's like a very unwavering faction of our country. So if you can take that voting block, then yeah, you got it. And Hillary lost a lot of that support, and rightfully so. I mean, she has a lot of things of course, she's been around for a few wars, Benghazi, what have you, but yeah, if Biden can secure that voting block, then yeah, he's got it.
Courtney?
Pretty much that as well. And one thing, my experience as a social worker, I'm going to leave it at that. There's a lot of veterans that utilize social benefits more than people realize. With the VA is in terrible shape. A lot of veterans are disabled. Trump has been shown to mock people who are disabled, and a lot of disability benefits have been cut. A lot of social nets have been cut. And I think a lot of people discount that as well. And I think the same thing that Ron said, just the way that he's been mocking the military in many ways. And I think a lot of people knew that he was a draft dodger beforehand, but I think it's kind of come out more and more now. It's more of the way people weren't aware that they are now. Pretty much that. I think a lot of people don't realize how many disabled veterans there are and how many of them are in poverty. It's a really disappointing amount. And I think one thing that he was pushing on the 2016 campaign trail was I'm actually going to treat our veterans good. Because it's true, they've been treated poorly for a very long time. They don't get the benefits and the help that they need. And that didn't happen. In fact, it's gotten worse. A lot of benefits restrictions have gotten tighter. They're not VA funding has gotten cut in a lot of states. So when you face with active military, when you face what's going on with the pandemic, because I've heard, this is anecdotal, a lot of friends that are in the military, how they talk about how things have been going for them during the pandemic and how it's poorly handled. I think all of those things put together, I would have been surprised if he wasn't losing support with them, quite honestly.
Well, we'll move forward to another person or another group of people that Trump doesn't like, apparently. Chris Wallace, who was announced as the moderator for the first presidential debate coming up at the end of this month. Wallace, of course, is a staple on Fox News. He's one of the actual non-loonies when it comes to existing. And Wallace was responsible for Trump's interview last month with the infamous Person Camera TV quote, where Wallace simply just asked basic follow-up questions and Trump fell apart, which would pale in comparison to what Axios would do a few weeks later. Anyway, Trump is not very happy about it. Of course, the campaign gave the Committee for Presidential Debates a long list of preferred moderators, which included, of course, people like Tucker Carlson and anchors on OAN. Of course, the committee cared nothing about that and tapped Chris Wallace for debate number one. A lot of people around the Biden campaign or who are familiar with Biden say that he is actually anticipating and cannot wait for the first debate here in a few weeks, that he has been prepping extensively and really could do some damage to Trump early on. How do y'all think this may shake up? We know Chris Wallace, even though he leans right, is actually, as a moderator, pretty fair. How do you think this shakes out for both campaigns? We know Trump isn't gonna prep at all. But how do we think this shapes out? Do we think a debate could actually turn the tables, or in case more support for Biden moving forward?
I guess I'm gonna go. I think so. Actually, I think one thing I'm really interested to see, because one of the latest Trump attacks is like, where's Biden? Where I think this debate's going to be huge for him. Not again. I think the people that are like true at heart Trump supporters, no one should waste effort on them. They're going to vote for him regardless. I think there's going to be people that are on, like, the moderates on edge. I think Chris Wallace, who he does lean right, especially from my perspective, I think in their eyes he is a moderate, like, as much as they are. I think a lot of people that are on the fence are probably politically aligned just as much as Chris Wallace is. I think that's pretty huge, because he's going to frame questions in a way that they're going to understand and they're going to feel from their perspective. And I think, as for what we could have, yeah, I think he's a pretty fair moderator, and I've liked how he has moderated the past debates. I think he's done a decent job, better than some others. But yeah, I think it's gonna go pretty well. I think Joe Biden definitely needs to be the calm, rational type person, because Trump gets him that very easily. And one thing that I learned in debate team is that you remaining as calm but yet passionate at the same time makes no matter what you're saying, look more rational than the other person's. And it still holds true with the American psyche. I think it'll help get the moderates over. And I think that if the biggest thing, I think there's going to be a lot of pandemic questions that Trump has been avoiding. So I think that's going to help out big time, is, once again, we need to center on the pandemic mostly, because that's what's going to get the moderates, if we're being honest.
Ron?
So once again, going back to 2016, Hillary mopped the floor with Trump, but at the same time she lost, which sounds crazy. And the reason why she lost, which is another crazy thing, but also indicative of America, is because it's going to be wild I say this, because she was too smart. Once again, people, she came off as very, and once again, this has as much to do with her being a woman than anything else. She came off as a know-it-all. She was basically playing a different game than Trump. But Joe has his, like, everyman quality. So if he can just look into the camera, deliver basically what his answers directly to the American people, because like Court said, Chris Wallace is going to be a fair moderator. Like, he's not gonna, throw soft pitches here. So as long as Joe can calmly deliver his answers, I think people will look at him and be like, you know what, that looks presidential to me, because Trump is gonna do what he's gonna do. And I think there are going to be some moderates just fed up with that, and they're going to look at Biden and be like, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. All this stuff is going on. There's civil unrest. Trump is doing the same thing, but Joe Biden is giving me answers I want to hear. So yeah, I do think this first debate is going to be crucial, and I like Joe's odds right now because it's set up perfectly for him. Muted again, Ryan.
Yeah, your mic's off again.
I keep on doing that. I do actually,
That's why
I do believe when it comes to potential moderators that I would take, as weird as it sounds, it might not sound that weird. I would take Chris Wallace over somebody like Chuck Todd, right?
No, seriously, yeah.
Because Chris Wallace is sort of the average American in terms of political alignment, right? Like most of them are center right, right leaning to an extent. Whereas Chuck Todd may fashion himself as somebody who's more moderate left or whatever the case may be. But there's this kind of thing that happens in liberal progressive circles where I wouldn't even say liberal progressive circles. I would say in moderate Democratic circles where they overcorrect, right? In an effort to be fair, they overcorrect. Yeah, and they're harder on the Democrat than they are the Republican because they don't want to seem like they're biased towards the Democrat. Whereas I think Chris Wallace is going to be fair. He's going to ask questions that are tough for both candidates. He is going to do things that will help Joe shine a little bit because, as crazy as it sounds, and we've mentioned it 1,000 times before, Joe's platform is very progressive. But a lot of people that are voting for him don't recognize or realize that in terms of the ways that Republicans can traditionally frame it, right? Where they're saying it's going to cost you so much money. He's going to drive America broke. Your taxes are going to go up. But the way Joe can it's weird that he is the one to be the vessel for things like tuition-free college, right? Because as Ron mentioned, he's the everyman. The by God, come on, come on, guys. It's going to, I think it's going to play out in a way that Hillary just couldn't because she's a woman, right? Or that Kamala couldn't because she's a black woman, on the presidential ticket. So I think it kind of allows us this transition. It kind of works out perfectly because it will allow this transition into people kind of embracing more of these progressive ideals because it came from an old white man that's not Bernie Sanders. So I think that makes a difference. And to me, I was it's weird. I've never been excited about a Chris Wallace anything, but I was excited about that. So, all right. Last topic we'll touch on today before we get out of here. And it's one that I was trying to end on a more positive note, but whatever. Bill Barr just ticks me off every time. Bill Barr, aside from getting on and lying about whether or not he knew that voting, twice is illegal or the president encouraging people to vote multiple times is illegal, also got up in front of God and his mama and basically said that the phenomenon of blacks feeling threatened when they're stopped by the police is basically false. He said this on CNN. He said that black Americans are treated differently by the police, but racism with the police isn't a big deal. It doesn't exist, right? I don't know how you talk out of both sides of your mouth like this. He doesn't believe there are two justice systems. He asked why I don't know. Look, vent on Bill Barr because I can't. I can't deal with
Rodney King, Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo. Like the names go on. This and he had the nerve to say like, "Oh, this was only a phenomenon as like 2014, 2015." No, like you can trace the history of policing in America directly to slavery and overseers, and the way to usher in just law and order once Bar lied again. Yeah, that should just be a constant marquee. Bar lied again. But yeah, but no, it's so ridiculous to suggest that in his office. Like that is so dangerous and so reckless and so ignorant. Like I don't even know how he can say that because black people may be treated differently, but it's not racism. What is it then? Like, please tell me what it is.
It's a dog whistle is what it is, because I know exactly where he was getting on. He was getting on, well, the black people are arrested more and are treated differently. Why do you think? That's exactly what he was saying. It was a dog whistle to just like, well, yeah, and what people have been saying, the truck profile pictures and the dog profile pictures and the American flag profile pictures have been saying, it's like, well, because they commit violence more. It's exactly what he was leading on to. even though the statistics and everything else proves otherwise. That's exactly what he was perpetuating, and I knew that as soon as I saw that. That's exactly what he was trying to lead on to. Like, yeah, it happens more, but it's not racist. That's all he needed to say for certain people to pick up on that.
Because the last thing that racist people want to be told is that they're racist, right? Like that's why so much of this is so hard to reform or redo, because it makes people kind of reshape the way that they see the country and the world, right?
We're not number one.
We're not, and it's like we're not racist. We just have black people that commit more crimes, yet countries in Africa aren't dealing with these levels of crime where there's more people of African descent. So which one is it? You know, it's those things where it's every argument they make is easily broken the minute you just poke at it, right? The minute you say, wait a minute, well, you know, black people commit more, you know, violent crime and everything like that. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. How much crime do white people commit? How much violent crime? How much of the, what about white on white crime, right? Like, I think the difference in percentage is like 3% in terms of the rate that it occurs, because it's proximity based crime. We were talking about Representative Kennard earlier in terms of the things that are in place that help prop up a system of repeated offenses and making sure that people don't, you know, fix their situation to keep from falling back into crime, right? Like,
why do people commit crime? Never asked that. Why do you think? Because of the poverty rates.
So it just baffles me, continuously blows my mind that people can kind of just fall back into the clutches of holding on to these racist ideals because it makes them feel better, right? Like it makes them feel as if there's nothing wrong, so I can just berate the protesters and feel better about myself.
May I have a soapbox moment here?
Yes, please get on.
One after Ron.
All right, so for this country to progress any more than it has, because right now we've hit a plateau, and that's crazy to say, but because it doesn't seem things have gotten much better since, you know, the 60s or the times before that, but we've hit a plateau of progress, and that's because and you heard this term thrown around like you know, circa Barack Obama, like we are post-racial. No, America is by and large a racist country, and racism is like far more common than people may think. The most common form of racism is like, let's say, Court, you're my coworker, and you ask me like, hey, why are people protesting? I'm like, well, you know, it's because Black people, we feel like we suffer racism on a daily basis, and you're like, no, and you like stop me. You're like, no, they're just hooligans, just right.
So voted for Obama.
So what you're doing now is you're suppressing a Black voice, a Black opinion. That is the most common form of racism. You can like me as a person, but you can still be racist because you are centering your feelings as a white person ahead of me as a Black person, even though I'm telling you what it is. Like my grandmother told you what it was, you know, her mother and father before her told you what it was, but you're still saying, no, that's not me. So when you say things like that, like, no, it's not racism, you're admitting that racism at its core is such a dumb premise. Racism, it means like, hey, I simply do not, you know, trust your opinion or accept your opinion simply on the basis of the color of your skin. So you are acknowledging that racism is stupid. Therefore, you must tie it to something else. Like, oh, maybe if they just got a job, or, oh, maybe if they just, you know, did this or did that, maybe if they didn't commit crimes, because it's easier to ignore all the problems that lie underneath that. So America needs to accept that, yes, this country was founded on racism. Like, you cannot ignore that. Like, it is woven into, you know, the fabric of this country. This country is racist. So in order for America to progress, we need to have these conversations, and these conversations can't be centered around white feelings. Like Court, you know, we have a lot of talk, and you're very self-aware, and there's never a time where you're like, yeah. So I just feel like people just need to just have these conversations and just listen. That's the most important thing. Like, that's how we tear down these barriers, by listening. But that's my rant.
Well, Courtney. We'll let you have your time.
All right, sorry, I kind of my internet connection's up. I'm gonna say I don't want to. That looks so bad too. Is like as you were addressing.
You're like, no, I'm out of here.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that last bit? What I said so I could address it correctly. I'm sorry. Let me.
Where did I close off? I don't know. I don't even remember what.
You're aware.
Oh yeah. I was just saying. Like you're. I was just saying like you're very self-aware, and to me like that is and that's like the like a major tenet of allyship, just simply listening. And because there are like a lot of people I've encountered, like whether they're coworkers or friends in the past, and they're honestly good people, but every time I try to tell them like why Black people are hurting and have been hurting for so long, they always correct me like it's not really like that, or maybe it's just so it just takes listening. So yeah, that's all I would say.
So yeah, I'm gonna go to soapbox. It's like I definitely didn't want to go to soapbox right. So it's like, oh, you're such a good listener. I think part of it is a lot of learning and growing. Of course, I was raised in, my parents have gotten a lot better about this too, of recognizing racism and that everyone is implicit. Every white person is implicit in racism. And I think my tangent is going to this starts with American propaganda going back, in my opinion, over a century or two of strongly associating every individual American's identity, white American's identity to this country, to where if you see anything wrong about this country, it offends the individual, because it's like, whoa, you're taking it's an affront to me. So when you talk about racism and how it's damaged people, groups of people for centuries in America, since it's implicitly racist, you're talking about each individual person. Does that make sense? So, sorry, the wine's also kicking in too, because so I'm trying not to go on a big tangent, but it's because every white American associates their identity so strongly to America. If they admit that America's racist, they got to admit that they're racist. And I think that was the biggest step for me. I think the biggest thing was in college. It's like especially if you're white, you're racist, whether you want to think you are or not. The biggest thing that you have to kind of look inside yourself, and that was the biggest thing, is like listen. And I think one thing people that are starting to open their eyes a little bit more, they need to do more, is instead of to be an ally, it's not my job to say what it is to be an ally, but this is basically my interpretation, is that you need to listen. And when you are being a voice, you need to not erase Black voices while you're doing it. You need to use your voice in a way where, okay, this person is white and they're not going to listen to Black voices. So this is where I step in, but you're still going to be citing Black voices at the same time. I think a lot of people, and I went on like kind of a Twitter tangent about it a couple of days ago, is that they're preaching to the choir when they're talking about progressive issues and racial issues. They're telling it to people that already know.
Right.
And like the thing that's grossed me out the most lately is like using AAVE, schooling Black people on it, and I'm just like, come here so I can slap you. Come here so I can slap you. But they're not going after their racist. And this is also for non-white people too. One of the biggest things is Latino people. Yes, there's a lot of colorism and racism there that you need to talk about. It's not just white people. There, I try to kind of like keep to my own, but that's one thing. It's not just white people. All non-Black people, everyone, you've got to address your biases in some way. You've got to get your pride out of the way that, yes, you're implicit because you benefit from privilege, and but because you probably have erased Black voices because you didn't want to get uncomfortable. Your comfort versus someone's surviving. That's what this is about, and I think that's what people really need to realize, is that's what it's about. You using your white voice as a true ally is you confronting your family members about it. That's all it is, and you confronting other white people about it. That's what it is, but not taking the platform from Black people. That's the biggest thing to me. That I think people have good intentions, but still, again, your white people are so used to just having the microphone that it makes us even uncomfortable to have that taken away. Like I have to, like, it's a thing of daily checking yourself daily. I have to check myself daily on issues. It's a learning and growing thing. I don't want to go on too bad of a tangent, but that's just one thing I've really noticed, and it really peeves me. And again, and one biggest thing, if you don't live in the South, shut the fuck up. You're in a racist area too. I don't care where you live. I'm so tired of this. I am so, and it's not. And when I say that, I think people from the South, white progressives from the South, need to be careful, because when we're trying to say, well, you're racist too, I think some people go to the point where they belittle Black experiences in the South.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fine line of, you need to focus in your own area. I mean, look at fucking Washington. The West Coast is supposed to be this progressive bastion. But when you look at the amount of police brutality in California, who is supposed to be super progressive, and you look at Washington, what's happening there, it is everywhere. It is so ingrained in every single part of this country. No one is exempt. And I think it takes for people to realize that nobody is an exempt. Nobody, not a single person. I don't care if you got a Black friend in 3rd grade. I don't care if you dated a Black person. You probably all, there's a different kind of racism there too, of exoticizing people. I think, I my child is mixed. So, and I think you're damaging your child in a way too. And I think a lot of people think they're exempt. Well, I see Black people as human too, when that's just crumbs. Like, congratulations, you see people as people. If you take that out, sorry, I'm gonna stop my tangent. But I think that's one thing that a lot of white people, and that's who I'm talking to directly, white people, I think a lot of people need to realize. As I say about taking away the mic, and I'm talking
have a glass of wine every episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will end it on that note tonight. Ron,
let me get in one last thing before we close out. So this is something I stumbled across because it is going to be a major issue going into November. So of course, as more states are opening up, no excuse absentee voting. There's a crisis that people are starting to recognize, like, okay, well, if people are afraid to go to the polls, who will work the polls? So I stumbled across this website. It is being co-signed by press the wrong button. People like Trevor Noah. I think I saw Alanya Glazer from I was about to say City Girls. She is definitely not City Girls. Broad City. Talking about this earlier, but yeah, it's called powerthepolls.org. So yeah, if you're interested in working a polling location, because think about it, these polling locations are typically being worked by our retired community, a lot of elderly people, so they probably can't work the polls this year. So yeah, just think about that. That's another way to give service. In addition to voting, just get out there and work the polls. If you are interested or know anyone who's interested, then make sure you sign up. Once you fill out that form, it will give you the form for your state, and then you could just send that in, and then you'll be contacted by the manager of that polling location, and they'll give you more information. So yeah, check that out. Just wanted to mention that. Power the polls.
Yeah, that's really important. I have submitted my application to work the polls this November. So I probably should tell my job. But anyway, if you live in Gwinnett County, Georgia, they're paying you, which I think all over might be $300.
Yeah, and you can get paid too. Yeah,
you get paid for it.
Not bad money for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I just want one thing. If you're one of the people that says go and vote and all the problems will be solved, at least go do this.
Mm-hmm.
At least go do this. I still want you to shut up, but at least go do this.
I will use my soapbox to say, before I go and do my workout, I will use my soapbox to say that all forms of activism are important, right? We need people to vote. Voting is probably the most important mechanism that we can use, but we need people to be in the streets. We need people who are protesting. We need people who are knocking on the doors of county and city and state officials, right? We need people who are talking to their local representatives. If you do nothing else, look up who directly represents you in your state legislature. I just spoke with Representative Kennard, who represents the Lawrenceville population. Last week, we spoke with Rebecca Mitchell, who was trying to go for my population in Gwinnett County. In Georgia, the House is flippable. He told us this. There are 14 seats that need to be done, but all of them are within the grasp. And we are going to make a point on here to try and interview as close to all 14 as we possibly can between now and November 3rd. But what you need to do is look up who yours is and hold them accountable. Email them. I simply emailed these people. I don't have any pool out here in Gwinnett County. I simply emailed them. They responded to say they would be on. That's how reachable they are. Instead of it being a House, Hank Johnson, who's my representative in the U.S. Congress, I can reach out to Rebecca Mitchell, or if I wanted to, I could reach out to Brett Harrell, who's a Republican representative, and he'd be willing probably to speak. But what's important is you go reach out to them, you find out who they are, what they sponsor, and you push them for the things that you want. So if they're not progressive enough for you, guess what? You can get on them about being more progressive. You can get on them about sorting different reforms. That's the thing that you need to do. So if nothing else, I understand that people are jaded by the voting system. I understand we don't have ranked choice voting like we should. I understand all of those things, but we can't get them until we organize locally. We cannot get them until we are controlling who is in power at the state level, who our representatives are. Okay. So Georgia can turn blue nationally, but if we don't flip the House, then the things that Gregg Kennard is doing, like criminal justice reform, ending cash bail, all those things, they go nowhere. Okay. He said that himself, that he's put all of these things on the table and they go nowhere because they're sponsored by Democrats. So we have to use all of the tools that we have in the toolbox. If you are activist bay, go be activist bay. If you are marching person, go be marching person. If you are the phone banker, be the phone banker. But all of these things have to happen, and it is continuous work. So if we win in November, the job is not done. It is just beginning, and we must remember that. That is the whole reason we started this damn series, okay? We must remember that this is tireless work. John Lewis fought till the day he died, and you better be prepared to do the same so that our children won't have to.
And vote for Ryan when he runs.
Vote for Ryan when he runs. And one thing I will say, and someone that's very progressive, and I live like right between two districts that are very Republican. They are so tired of hearing. They are so tired, but guess what? They haven't blocked me yet. So they do respond to emails, and they're very tired of me, but they respond. So if I can do it, trust me, I live in Cobb County. As someone as progressive as me, because I have to, like I said, I know not everyone can because of your job. I'm one of those people. You can donate like me, and you can also be very annoying to your representatives because I am. That emailing your representative is for free, and sometimes if you don't like them, knowing that you're taking part of their day is satisfying.
I have the phone number of 4 representatives in my county in my phone now. I did not have those numbers 2 weeks ago. So
they respond.
Do this. Do this. Okay? Like, you can do it. Look up your representative. Look up who represents you.
If you look like me and you're not voting, you're exhibiting white privilege. Okay.
All right. The podcast will be available on Apple and Spotify in the morning. If you're listening to this on Apple and Spotify, then ignore this part. Kidswearcrowns.com is where you go to check out more content. Make sure you follow us on both those streaming platforms. You can follow us on Twitter at the KWC blog. You can follow Courtney at Courtliz Camp. You can follow us on Facebook, the Kids Wear Crowns. You can also follow us on YouTube. If you search channels and search the KWC blog, you'll find us there. So with that being said, I'm finna go get this running before the sun goes down. Go Blazers, kicking off here in 8 minutes. I'm conflicted because I don't want football to happen this year because of pandemic. I want the boys to stay safe, but if they're going to be safe, then go out there and kick some ass. That's all I got.
Peace.
Oh, we're looking for someone to do cups for us still.
Yeah.
If you do cups, I will listen. If you sponsor us, I will be drunk with your logo on my wine glass. And I have it up a lot. We're
gonna do another after party here soon. We got to get it together.
Yeah, we gotta do another after party.
I wore the Shakira shirt.
That's so awesome. Yeah, anyway, that's like the coolest shirt.
I will cuss less if you sponsor us. I'll do it.
No, cuss more. All right.
Thank you.
We're out. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.